It was a routine Tuesday, me, just trying to park my car in the grocery lot, minding my own business, when a horn blared behind me like a battlefield klaxon. I jolted, hands tightening on the wheel, heart slamming into my ribs. Before I could catch my breath, a hulking SUV loomed in my rearview, headlights flashing like a wrathful god. Then the window rolled down, and there she was. A middle-aged woman, designer sunglasses swallowing her face, her sneer sour enough to spoil milk. "You stole my parking spot," she bellowed, voice a banshee wail. "I was waiting for that." I blinked, baffled. I scanned the lot twice before pulling in. No cars, no signals, just empty asphalt. "I'm sorry I didn't see you waiting," I said, keeping it steady. "I got here first." Her face twisted into something I'd only seen on retail managers sicking security on shoplifters. "Oh, you did not just say that," she hissed, knuckles whitening on her steering wheel. I sighed, sensing the storm brewing. I'd met her type before, entitled, rules-bending narcissists, but never one this unhinged over a parking space. I grabbed my coffee, took a sip, and weighed my options. De-escalation seemed smart, but Karen, because she was textbook Karen, wasn't here for peace. "Move your car," she snapped, her tone slicing air. I stared. "What? You heard me, move it." Shoppers slowed, a crowd forming, phones poised. I shook my head. "No." That word hit her like a match to gasoline. She gasped, clutched her pearls, literal pearls, and pounded her steering wheel. "This is harassment. I was here first." She shrieked, jabbing a finger at me like I'd murdered her heirloom. "You weren't even in the lot," I said. "Lies," she screeched. "I was circling. So not here, just hovering like a vulture." Teenagers filmed. A guy in a baseball cap smirked. A kid in a Spider-Man hoodie gaped mid-ice scream. "If you don't move in 5 seconds, I'm calling the police," she threatened. Flare dialed to 11. I laughed, couldn't help it. "Over a parking spot? You think this is funny?" She spat, face blooming red. "A little." Her eyes slit, and I braced for round two, coffee still warm in my hand, crowd buzzing like a live wire. Then she snapped. Throwing her SUV into park, she flung the door open and stomped toward me, fury incarnate. "Get out of the car," she demanded. "Yeah, that's not happening," I said, calm but firm. "I'm not fighting you over this." Before I could blink, her hand cracked across my face. The slap was lightning sharp, surreal. My cheek stung, the lot went graveyard quiet, a gasp. "Oh, she's done for," someone muttered. The Spider-Man kid yelped, "Oh," like it was a wrestling match. I turned back slow, stunned, as Karen froze, her own shock mirroring mine. Then the pivot, she clutched her chest, gasping, "Oh my God, he attacked me." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "He threatened me, I was defending myself," she cried, Oscar-worthy. The crowd's phones stayed up, capturing her unraveling. I rubbed my cheek, chuckling in disbelief. "You think they'll buy that?" "Yes," she insisted, blind to the lenses. "You were aggressive." Before I could reply, 2 cops strolled up, tall woman in aviators, burly guy with a buzz cut. "We saw everything," she said, nodding at their cruiser feet away. Karen's jaw dropped. "What?" "Watched you slap him," the guy added, notepad out. "That's assault, ma'am." Her world tilted, and mine just got a front row seat to justice. Karen stood there, fish-mouthed, as the cops' words sank in, "Assault, ma'am," hanging heavy in the air. The crowd's phones didn't waver, catching every twitch of her unraveling. My cheeks still throbbed, but I couldn't suppress a smirk. This was too perfect. "What?" she finally croaked, eyes darting between the officers. The tall one, aviators glinting, sighed like she'd seen this movie before. "We were parked right there, saw you slap him clear as day." Karen's brain short-circuited, her designer sunglasses sliding down her nose. The burly cop held up a hand. "Ma'am, step aside, we need to sort this." She gulped, then went full Karen, clutching her chest again. "He provoked me, it's a misunderstanding." I rubbed my cheek. "Yeah, I don't think so." Her pleading glare hit me, but the cops weren't budging. Then the tears, big, theatrical sobs, mascara streaking. "I was just trying to park." "He scared me, I was defending myself." The aviator cop sigh aged her a decade. "Ma'am, we watched you hit him, save it." Karen amped it up, voice wobbling. "I have a bad back, my doctor says no stress, this is too much." The burly cop raised an eyebrow, pen hovering over his notepad. "Didn't stop you storming out to slap him." She gasped, betrayed, then spun to me, desperation dripping. "Please tell them you won't press charges, we can forget this." I leaned back, coffee cold now. 5 seconds ago you wanted me arrested, now it's forget it." I wasn't thinking, it was the heat of the moment. "You can't ruin my life over this." The notepad cop cleared his throat. "Ma'am, ID, please." Her hands flailed, bird-like. "This is harassment, I pay taxes, my husband's a lawyer." I nearly choked. Of course she had a lawyer husband, the ultimate Karen trump card. The cops swapped unimpressed looks. "We're not arresting you yet," aviators said, patience fraying. "Just need to document it, ID." Karen huffed, stomped to her SUV, and yanked her purse open, tossing her license at them like a tantruming kid. "I have places to be," she snapped, arms crossed. A heckler yelled, "Yeah, like slapping strangers." Laughter rippled. Karen whirled. "Shut up," she shrieked, red-faced. The cop scribbled, handed back her ID. "You're getting a citation, disorderly conduct, assault." Her body locked. "A fine? You're fining me?" "Unless he presses charges," he nodded my way. "Then it's more." Karen spun to me, neck snapping fast. "You would." I rubbed my cheek, mulling it. "Assault's a big deal, Karen." She whimpered, a strangled scream escaping. "Please, I'll pay for your coffee, a gift card." I raised an eyebrow, gold bars next. The cop cut in. "Sir, your call." I paused, letting her stew, then sighed. "No charges." Her relief sagged her whole frame. "Thank God, but," I added, pointing at the crowd, "this isn't going away. You're viral by now." Her soul vacated, eyes bulged, head whipping to the filming teens. "Delete it, delete all of it." One laughed. "Lady, that's not how the internet works." Then a rumpled suit jogged up. Steve, her lawyer boyfriend, tie askew. "Calm down, I'm her legal rep," he barked. Karen wailed, "Steve." The cops blinked. "Bar license," Steve faltered. I've seen every Law and Order," the crowd roared, and Karen's circus just got a new ringmaster. Steve's grand entrance, crooked tie, discount suit, and a Law and Order flex sent the parking lot into hysterics. Karen's last shred of dignity evaporated as laughter bounced off the asphalt. "Steve," she hissed, mortified, but he puffed up, hands raised. "I'm her legal advisor, let's settle this." The aviator cop, already done, pinched her nose. "Sir, license to practice?" Steve blinked, confidence flickering. "Well, not per se, but I know the system." The crowd wheezed, someone doubled over, gasping. Even the burly cop bit back a smirk, scribbling faster. "I thought I could fake it," Steve muttered, deflating. Karen's jaw dropped, betrayal flashing. "Steve, you idiot." The officers swapped looks, exasperation in stereo. "We're done here," aviators said, voice flat. Karen snapped back to me, venom reloaded. "This isn't over, I'll see you in court." I nearly choked. "In court, over you slapping me on video?" Her chin jutted, smugness reborn. "Defamation, you humiliated me, I won't stand for it." The notepad cop sighed. "Ma'am, you slapped him, he didn't defame you, you did this." She floundered, then lit up with a new gambit. "I have trauma, this caused me emotional distress, I'll sue for damages." The teen filming snorted, nearly dropping his phone. "Lady, you assaulted him and lied to cops, what judge'll buy that?" Karen snarled, then pivoted to pitiful, voice quaking. "My back, my anxiety, I need compensation." Steve perked up, grasping for relevance. "Yes, as her advisor, will demand retribution in civil court." The cop deadpanned. "You're not a lawyer, sir." Steve gulped, adjusting his tie like it. Save him. "I know a guy who worked in a courthouse." More laughter. Karen glared at him, regretting every choice. "You're going to regret this," she spat at me. "Doubt it," I shrugged. She gasped, spun on her heel, and stormed off right into a rogue shopping cart. Her foot snagged, arms windmilled, and she face-planted with a shriek. The lot exploded, teens yelled "World Star." The Spider-Man kid clapped sticky hands. Steve rushed over, stifling a laugh as her purse spilled, sunglasses skittering. "This is unfair," she wailed, scrambling up, hair a wreck. The aviator cop rubbed her temples. "Ma'am, we're done." But Karen wasn't. She bolted, muttering about courts, leaving Steve to trail her like a lost puppy. The crowd dispersed, still chuckling, phones pocketing viral gold. I leaned on my car, cheek fatting from sting to memory, figuring that was the end. It wasn't. Weeks later, I sat in a courtroom, Karen at the stand, sobbing for the judge. "Your Honor, he ruined my life, my reputation, my yoga studio shuns me." The judge, grizzled and unimpressed, raised an eyebrow. "You're suing for distress, damage, humiliation." "Yes," she wailed. He turned to me. "Your side." I nodded at my lawyer, barely needed, who hit play on a projector. Every angle flickered up, the slap, her meltdown, Steve's flop, the cart crash. Snorts broke the silence. The judge sighed, faith in humanity draining. "Ma'am, this is absurd." Karen leapt up. "He provoked me." "You slapped him," the judge said, flat. "Case dismissed." The gavel cracked and Karen's gasp wail echoed. Steve muttered, "That went terribly," earning her glare. I walked out, karma's breeze at my back, knowing 5 million views already sealed her fate. The gavel's echo still rang in my ears as I left the courthouse, sunlight hitting me like a victory lap. Karen's "I'll appeal to a higher court" mutter faded behind me, drowned by Steve's bumbling apologies. My phone buzzed. 5 million views on Karen gets instant justice, comments piling up. Legend, she's toast. Slap of the century. I grinned, unlocking my car, figuring she'd slink off, licking her wounds. I underestimated her. Next morning, my inbox pinged. A legal notice from a real lawyer this time, not Steve. Karen was suing again. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming my public humiliation via viral videos wrecked her life. She demanded $50,000. Coffee money escalated to a jackpot. I called my lawyer, Dan, who laughed. She's got no case. Judge already ruled. She's fishing for a settlement or sympathy. We'll counter hard. My cheek didn't sting anymore, but her audacity did. I greenlit the fight. Karen wanted round two. She'd get it. By noon, the neighborhood buzzed. A neighbor, Pete, texted. She's canvassing, telling everyone you're a bully, ruining her health. I peeked out. Sure enough, Karen's SUV idled down the street, her in those oversized sunglasses, knocking on doors with a sob story. Pete added, she's got flyers, justice for Karen. Half the block's laughing, half's annoyed. I snagged one later, a grainy photo of me parking, captioned, this man destroyed my peace, help me fight back. Dan faxed her lawyer a cease and desist for defamation. Ironic, given her court flop. She's unhinged, he said. This'll bury her deeper. That evening, a local news van rolled up. Karen had pitched them her victim tale. Channel 7's reporter, a perky blonde, interviewed her on her lawn, pearls back on, voice quivering. He provoked me, then let the internet ruin me. I'm the real victim. The clip aired at 6:00 p.m., cutting to my viral slap moment. Comments online flipped fast. She's delusional. Poor Karen's backfired again. I wasn't laughing anymore. This wasn't just petty, it was a campaign. Dan filed our counterclaim next day. Defamation, harassment, $10,000 for my trouble. She's poking a bear, he warned. If she pushes, we've got witnesses, video, police reports. She'll drown in legal fees. Pete dropped by, grinning. Her flyers are trash now. Folks saw the news, know she's full of it. But she's doubling down. HOA meeting tonight, wants you banned from the lot. I wasn't even HOA, but Karen's logic never needed facts. I crashed the meeting, packed room, Greg from the last story chairing, Karen front and center. He's a menace, she wailed, waving her flyer. Harassing me, parking wherever, he's a threat. Greg nodded, nervous. I stood. I'm not HOA, you've got no say over me. She slapped me, lost in court, and now she's lying to you. I held up the police report, murmurs spread. Greg rushed a vote, restrict non-member parking. It failed, 60-40. Karen stormed out, Steve trailing, her war crumbling, but her fire still spitting. Karen's HOA flop didn't stop her. It fueled her. She'd lost the courtroom, the parking lot vote, and most of the neighborhood's patience, but her Justice for Karen crusade was just warming up. Next morning, my phone buzzed with a Google alert. Local woman claims parking dispute ruined her life, splashed across a tabloid blog. She'd upgraded from Channel 7 to a clickbait mill, posing teary-eyed with her flyer, claiming I'd orchestrated a smear campaign with doctored videos. The comments split, half mocked her, half bought the sob story. Pete texted, she's outside with a megaphone, literally. I peeked out. There she was, packing my street, bellowing, this man humiliated me, don't let him win. Neighbors gawked. A kid on a bike filmed it. Dan called, livid. She's defaming you in real time. We're adding this to the counterclaim. I'm filing for a restraining order too. She's unhinged. I nodded. Do it. She's begging for a bigger hole. By afternoon, her lawyer, some sleazy ambulance chaser named Vince, fired back, upping her suit to $75,000, tossing in loss of social standing and mental anguish. Dan laughed it off. Vince is a hack. Judge'll shred this. Our restraining order's in motion. She'll have to stay 100 yards away. That evening, Karen escalated, flyers stapled to every pole in a mile radius, now with my license plate circled. Beware this bully. Pete snagged one, shaking his head. She's losing it. Half these got torn down already. Folks are fed up. The tabloid ran a follow-up. Karen fights back against parking tyrant, quoting her, claiming I threatened her life that day. No proof, just her word and Steve's, who chimed in, I saw his aggression firsthand. Twitter lit up, #Karen strikes back trending, memes of her slap remixed with her megaphone rant. I tweeted the police report, facts over fiction, and watched it rack up retweets. Her narrative was cracking, but she was too deep to quit. Next day, a process server hit my door, subpoena for a deposition in her expanded suit. Dan grinned over the phone. She's desperate, thinks she can scare you into settling. We've got her megaphone stunt on neighbor cams. It's harassment gold. That night, the HOA lot flared up again. Karen parked her SUV across two spaces, a handwritten sign taped to it. Reserved for victims of Jake. Shoppers rolled eyes. Pete snapped a pic. She's a cartoon now. I filed a complaint with the store. Private property, their rules. Manager towed her by morning. She shrieked on Instagram Live as it rolled away. This is persecution. Views spiked, but comments turned savage. Cry harder, Karen. Slap lady. At it again. Dan prepped our deposition response, every video, witness statement, and her own words queued up. She built her own coffin, he said. We're just nailing it shut. Karen's war was loud, but the tide was shifting. Her megaphone couldn't drown out the truth piling up against her. Karen's towed SUV and Instagram meltdown lit a match under her crumbling campaign. By noon, the tow yard posted her rant video, her shrieking persecution, while Steve flailed in the background, hitting 500,000 views in hours. #slap Karen trended harder, memes multiplying. Her slap synced to cartoon sound effects, her megaphone wails captioned, when you lose but won't quit. My counterclaim grew teeth. Dan tacked on her flyer spree and megaphone harassment, pushing damages to $15,000. She's handing us evidence daily, he said, prepping for her deposition. Vince'll crack when we play this back. Her lawyer fired a weak volley, motion to dismiss our restraining order, claiming free speech. Dan smirked. It's not speech, it's stalking. Judge'll see through it. That afternoon, Pete texted, she's back, protest sign now. I looked out. Karen paced the sidewalk, 101 yards from my door. She'd measured, hoisting a placard. Jake's lies ruin lives. A handful of HOA loyalists joined her, but most passers-by honked and laughed. The deposition hit next day, cramped room, Karen in a power suit, Vince fidgeting beside her. Dan laid out our stack, police report, 20 crowd videos, neighbor cams of her megaphone tirade, store footage of her SUV stunt. I sat calm as she squirmed. You slapped me, fact, I said when my turn came. Then lied about it, fact, now you're harassing me, fact. Her eyes darted, Vince coughed. My client was under duress, he stammered. She felt threatened. Dan hit play, slap video crystal clear. This look threatened to you? The court reporter stifled a grin. Karen flushed. He provoked me, she snapped. How? Dan pressed. By existing. Vince winced. Even he knew that tanked. Her megaphone clip rolled next, her voice blasting my name, neighbors glaring. That's not harassment, I asked. She sputtered. I'm the victim. Dan leaned in. Of what? Your own actions. The room went quiet. Vince scribbled furiously, outmatched. Post-deposition, her protest swelled. 10 HOA diehards with signs. Justice for Karen. But the tide had turned. Pete rallied neighbors, 20 showed up with countersigns. Karen slapped first. Leave Jake alone. A honking war erupted. Support for me drowned her crew out. Twitter flipped harder. Her latest live, whining about court bias, got ratioed 10-1. Give it up. You're a meme, not a martyr. The store banned her from the lot after her SUV stunt. She wailed on Facebook. Discrimination. Promptly mocked off the platform. Dan called triumphant. Judge denied their motion, restraining orders live. She's barred 100 yards and her case is DOA. One more push, she's cooked. That night, her sign wilted in the rain, her loyalists bylaid. Karen stood alone, soaked, screaming at no one. My phone buzzed, video views hit 8 million. She built a stage, but I'd stolen the show, and the law was closing the curtain. The restraining order hit Karen like a brick wall, but she didn't crumble, she clawed. Barred 100 yards from me, she set up camp just past the line, a folding chair and megaphone her new throne. This is tyranny, she blared, voice cracking through the neighborhood, her soggy Jake's lies sign propped beside her. Pete texted, she's losing it 3 hours straight now. Neighbors groaned, some filming, others calling cops. By dusk, 2 officers, not the originals, rolled up. Ma'am, you're disturbing the peace, one said, eyeing her setup. I'm exercising my rights, she shrieked. He's the criminal. They cited her anyway, noise violation, and hauled off her chair when she refused to budge. Twitter erupted. Karen's megaphone, the sequel, clips racking up views. Dan called gleeful. She's burying herself. Judge'll see this before ruling. Her case is toast. Ours is gold. My counterclaim swelled to $20,000, harassment piling up like her citations. Next day, her lawyer Vince tried a Hail Mary, motion to suppress the slap videos, claiming tampering. Dan countered with originals from 20 sources, time-stamped, pristine. They're desperate, he said. Court's set for Friday, she's got nothing. Karen pivoted to media again, hit a local radio show, sobbing about a conspiracy to silence me. The host, a shock jock type, egged her on. Sounds like a setup, Karen. She ate it up. He planned it, ruined my life. Callers tore her apart. Lady, we saw you slap him. Quit whining. And the station cut her off mid-rant. Karen radio flop trended, her victim act flailed. Pete dropped by. HOAs splitting half want her gone, say she's tanking property values. Her old allies peeled away, tired of the circus. That night her SUV rolled back, parked legally this time, plastered with Justice for Karen decals. Shoppers snapped pics, the store shrugged, her ban held, but the street was fair game. Friday's hearing was a slaughter. Dan played her megaphone encore, radio flop, and flyer spree. Karen's face sank with each clip. Vince stammered, she's under stress. The judge, same grizzled vet, wasn't having it. She assaulted him, harassed him, defamed him, all on record, case dismissed. Karen wailed, this is unjust. He turned to my counterclaim. $20,000 reasonable given the evidence, granted plus costs. Gavel down, her jaw hit the floor. Steve beside her muttered, we're screwed. She spun on him. Your fault. Outside, she raged to no one, crowd gone, phones off. Dan clapped my shoulder. She's broke and barred, done. That night, her SUV vanished. Whispers said she'd listed her house. Views hit 10 million. Karen, a cautionary tale etched in viral infamy. My neighborhood exhaled, free of her echo, and I parked in peace, coffee never tasting better. Karen's courtroom collapse was the final nail. $20,000 judgment, legal fees, and a restraining order chaining her to defeat. Her SUV's absence confirmed it. Pete texted. Sold, signs up, she's gone. The neighborhood sighed relief, her megaphone's ghost fatting from memory. My counterclaim check arrived a week later, $22,500 with costs, Dan grinning over the phone. She paid fast, probably drained her savings. Vince dumped her too, bad PR. Twitter crowned me parking lot king. Slap Karen fatting to a punchline. 12 million views, memes immortalizing her cart flop. The store lot became a shrine. Shoppers nodded my way, some snapping selfies by the spot. Pete threw a block party, 50 strong, no HOA banners, just beers and Karen-free toasts. You broke her reign, he said, clinking my bottle. I laughed. Just parked my car. Her house sold quick. A young couple, oblivious to the saga, waving OVER Chinese letter in day. Whispers said she'd fled to a condo downtown, Steve in tow, her lawyer dream dead. The HOA limped on, Greg ousted in a quiet coup, new chair slashed fees, ditched petty rules. My flyers vanished from polls, her radio flop aired as a gag on late-night shows. Dan filed the restraining order permanent, 100 yards forever, her shadow banned. The Chronicle ran a capstone, parking spat hero ends Karen era, my coffee sip a local legend. Views settled at 15 million, Karen a digital fossil, her slap a warning to entitled ghosts everywhere. I drove home, parked without a blare, and stretched in silence. Karma had swung hard, and I'd walked away with cash, quiet, and a story no one top. The lot stayed mine, not by law, but by right, and Karen's war ended where it began, with me unbothered, keys in hand.